Hi guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. No, you're not seeing things. I have new pink hair. Do you guys like it? So I dyed my hair pink, I would say probably about 4 or 5 days ago, and I feel like it's already like rinsing out, so I think I'm gonna have to do it again to kind of seal in the color. Anyway, new pink hair. Hopefully you guys like it. I enjoy it. I kind of feel like I reached my true form. So anyway, today's video is going to be all about my moving process. As some of you may know, and if you don't, welcome to my channel. As some of you may know, I moved from New York to Los Angeles just a little over a year ago, and I get a lot of questions about my move actually, and just people wanting to know what the whole moving process was like, how you do a long distance moves, if I have any like tips and tricks, how my job hunting process was, which is terrible, by the way. I'll link the video below. But a lot of people ask me questions about like my move and everything like that. And I have 2 specific questions, and if this was one of you guys, then here you go. This video is for you. But in general, I feel like a lot of people want to move, or they have the idea that they should move or want to move, and they just don't have like any practical advice or any tips and tricks. So without further ado, today is going to be a moving tips kind of video. Okay, so first things first is my first tip on moving, and some of these are just like general moving tips and other ones are like more long distance moving tips. The first tip that I have for you is set a date. It's so easy to just keep pushing when you want to move back, and then you'll like never do it. So you have to commit to a date. Also, committing to a date is super important because you can kind of work backwards. So for example, I moved the end of January, and so I had a set date where like I was gonna be having my moving truck come and like pick up all my stuff. Then I knew when I had to actually leave. I knew when I had to give notice at work. So setting a date is not only important for planning purposes, but also for accountability. If you don't have a set date, it's easy to keep pushing it back, and you sort of drive yourself crazy. It's really hard to plan and things like that. So my number 1 tip, set a date and stick to it. Number 2, once I knew that I was going to move to LA and I had a date chosen, I needed to decide how I was going to get there to start the planning process. So you need to figure out, are you taking a car? If you're not taking a car, it's easy to just hop on a flight and then just have your stuff meet you out here via moving truck. But for myself, I knew I was going to be taking my car and driving from New York to LA. So I had a couple of different options available to me. I could either ship my car out here, and there's like different ways that could happen depending on where you're moving from. You can either have it like, basically they put it on a truck and it, you know, move it out here. A lot of people like cram their cars or their trucks with like boxes and stuff, because that's no additional cost. So you can either have your car meet you wherever you're going that way. The second thing is there's like these things called pods. So you can have like all of your boxes and everything picked up in a pod and then have the pod delivered. Some people do that. Third thing rather I was thinking is you can rent a truck. Now a lot of times trucks go by the miles, and since I had just about 3,000 miles between New York and LA, if you have a shorter moving distance, maybe a moving truck is more fathomable. But because I knew that I was going to be driving and I had 3,000 miles, renting a moving truck just wasn't an option for me. But again, just giving you different options here. The other thing that you can do is, I was gonna put a trailer on my truck. Since I knew I was driving, you can just rent smaller trailers. But then I had the problem that, you know, trailers, the size that I was able to afford was fairly small. It wouldn't have fit everything I needed. But again, you can put a trailer onto your car or your truck. Other option, which is the one I chose, was just to drive, and then I had my moving truck come and pick up all of my stuff about a week or 2. And you have to plan it properly because, you know, you want your stuff to arrive here about or around the same time that you get here. I had them pick up my stuff about 2 weeks before I left, And then by the time I left and drove out here, within a couple of days I had my stuff. So you need to kind of figure out what you're bringing. If you have a car, there's definitely more planning involved in the process. So figure out what you're taking, figure out how many boxes, are you bringing furniture, are you driving, and once you have some of those basics jotted down, it'll be a lot easier to go from there. Third tip is once you kind of figure out what you're taking, what you're bringing, what you're leaving, what you're selling, start selling things that you don't need. Don't wait to the last minute. A lot of people do this, and it's not something I recommend. If you know that you're not taking your couch or your bike or your desk, start selling those things, because I put basically all of the money that I got from selling the things I wasn't taking, and I was able to put that into my moving cost. So for example, I sold my TV, I sold my couch, I sold my coffee table, my bedroom set, and you'll be surprised, like put everything on Craigslist. My bed was super old and I only bought it for like $300 from IKEA, and I got like $180 for it. Like I couldn't believe I got more than half when it was so old and like basically an IKEA piece of cruddy furniture. So definitely put everything that you're not taking on Craigslist. You'll be surprised how much money people will pay for used items. And then whatever you don't sell, I just basically donated. But ask friends, ask family, put things on your Facebook. Now there's like all sorts of forums on Facebook where you can sell things. And you know, even my TV, which again was super old, I got $150 for my TV. I think brand new, I paid $600 for it, and it was like almost 10 years old. So you'll be surprised what people will buy from you, and then again, you can take all of that money that you made off selling things that you're not going to take with you, and then push that into your moving cost or your savings account. But the next tip is once you've set a date, kind of figure out what you're taking, what you're leaving, and then basically started selling things that you don't need. And again, I would give myself, I think I gave myself a month to sell everything. I would not wait until last minute, because last minute you'll start making silly decisions, or like you'll just be like, oh, because I don't want to take my TV, you'll take anything for it, when you have more bargaining capabilities if you do that like well in advance. So that's definitely a huge tip. And the next thing I would suggest is figure out when you're going to give notice at your employer, because this was something kind of spur of the moment. I think from when I made the decision that I was going to move out to LA to me actually moving was about a 6-month turnaround process. So I didn't have an awful lot of time to plan, you know. I told my friends and family first, but you're gonna want to give notice, and if you've worked at your company or you have a good relationship with your boss, more than 2 weeks is probably the right thing to do. If it's like just, you know, a part-time job, or like a babysitting job, or like you've graduated school and you just work at a coffee shop part-time, I think 2 weeks is more than sufficient. But for myself, I worked for the company that I left for about 6 or 7 years, and you know, I knew my boss wasn't going to be able to easily replace me, and we're going to have to like interview people, and I was going to have to train someone. So definitely, like once in step one, once you have your date, kind of work backwards and say like, okay, maybe it's fair to give my boss a month notice. Now here's a little extra side note to that whole thing. Whenever you give notice, you have to be prepared that they're gonna let you go immediately. So you wanna give enough notice, but like not too much notice, if that makes sense. Like I don't wanna give more than a month, but I knew I wanted to give more than 2 weeks. I kinda knew I had the relationship with my boss that like he wasn't gonna be like, get out of here, you free to go now. You know, but I definitely wanted to give him ample time to find a replacement for me and not leave him in a bind. So figure out when you're moving, figure out what the relationship with your boss is, or anticipate their reaction when you tell them that you're going to be leaving. For me, it wasn't like I was quitting or going to a competitor. I was moving across the country and basically starting over. So my boss, you know, was definitely understanding about it, and definitely was like super appreciative of the extra couple weeks that I gave him. So that would be tip number 4, is figure out, kind of circle on your calendar a date that you're going to give notice. The 5th thing that I would recommend is after you've given notice or plan to give notice, start figuring out where you want to live. So for example, I knew I wanted to live in Los Angeles, but I've never lived out here. I have no idea about the West Coast. So you're gonna wanna start looking at different areas. LA, I had no idea prior to moving like how large Los Angeles is. Like you can drive an hour and still be in LA proper. So you're gonna wanna do like a little bit of due diligence in like trying to figure out where you want to move. There's different areas of LA, and what I learned is some are like really nice areas and some are like slums. So you're gonna wanna like look into different areas, different neighborhoods. What kind of vibe do you want? Like Shelly, my roommate, and I knew that like we wanted something safe that, you know, was fairly close in walking distance to like restaurants and things of that sort, so that we didn't always have to drive. I also wanted like a family-friendly neighborhood where like, you know, we're looking around, making sure people were walking, you know, families and people were out and about at night, not like locking their doors and closing the blinds kind of thing. So start researching neighborhoods that you want to live in. You'll also notice that there's a stark and varying rents depending on the location. So Los Feliz, which is where I live, is kind of expensive, but not as expensive as West Hollywood, which is, you know, even less expensive than Santa Monica and Venice Beach and places like that. So depending on where you live, there'll be some really super inexpensive places, and if it's super inexpensive and it's pretty nice place, that should raise red flags that it's probably not in a good neighborhood. So definitely do your research, figure out where you want to live, and then the next, I guess, step 6 or tip 6, tip 6 would then be figure out, do you have enough money and rent costs to live by yourself? Initially, I wanted to move to Santa Monica and I wanted to live alone. And then I looked at the rent prices and I figured out that I could not even afford a studio. So you're gonna wanna definitely like figure out like where you wanna live, can you afford it, and if you start looking at different rents and you're like, yeah, this is way out of my budget, then you can decide that you want to find a roommate, which is what I decided. Now, the first place that I want to give you a tip to go is Craigslist. I know a lot of people are creeped out by that, but if you're not moving to LA with a friend or have family that you could stay with before you get to meet people and can figure out like, okay, this would be a nice roommate, do what I did and go on Craigslist. You can vet people properly. Usually people will have a little bio on themselves. You can start texting them or FaceTime them. You can learn a lot about someone by their social media, so like go on their Facebook, take a look at their Instagram, and that's kind of like how Shelly, my roommate, and I met each other. So you go to Craigslist, you go to the rental section and you look for the tabs that says rooms shared. There will be places and rooms for like rent. You know, be wary obviously of who you're living with. Don't be desperate, so give yourself enough time to like make an informed decision. If you're a young woman and there's a 50-year-old man who's asking you to come live with him, that should raise eyebrows too, unless you know him. So don't leave yourself in a bind where you just have to take any room. Give yourself ample time to kind of, you know, look around and research and meet different people. So definitely, if you need to look for a roommate, I suggest Craigslist. I found most of my roommates throughout, you know, any apartment that I've rented, I found on Craigslist, and you'll be surprised. Like Shelly and I are inseparable, super normal, super awesome. A year living together, no problem. So you'll be surprised actually who you meet on there. The tip number 8. So once you figure out where you want to live and figure out whether you want a roommate, I would definitely suggest booking a flight and actually coming to the location you're looking to move. Walk around. Like half the places that Shelly and I looked at initially, once we saw them in person, we were like, no way. There were bars on the window of some of the places that like looked nice on the inside. So I highly, and I stress this a lot, I highly recommend you coming to the physical location of where you're looking to move. Walk around the neighborhood. Like one of the first things we did when we found this apartment was walk around, see who's out and about, what kinds of restaurants are in the area, what kind of vibe does it have. So I think that's super important, and then obviously it's a lot easier to kind of book places to look at. You can get a better sense of the apartment by actually walking through it. And once you find like an area that you fall in love with, like it's a lot easier to kind of hone in on that area. So once we knew that we really thought Los Feliz was super cute and super trendy, we decided like, okay, let's just look in this area. And I think we looked at like 2 places in this area, and the one that we're living in right now is one of those places. So definitely book a trip if you can. If you have the luxury of coming here before or prior to moving, highly recommend it. And my tip number 9 is once you've come to the location, you've signed your lease, you know where you're living, you basically have given notice at work, you have pretty much everything ready to go. The number 9 tip is, and please do this, is once you book your moving truck, most people have a moving truck of some sort, please do your homework when it comes to moving companies. There's so many moving companies that try and undercut prices of the other moving company, and you can get easily scammed. So because I was like on a pretty tight budget, I was looking at company A, B, C, D, E, F. I narrowed it down to like my top 3. I told them what I was bringing, and of course they all start like scavengers trying to win my business. I went with obviously the company that was like the best price. And another company was like, are you sure? Like that seems like a significantly lower than the going rate. It's not even competitive. It's like way below. And that should raise a red flag. If like company A, B, and C are all around, give or take $100 or $200, and then company D is like $600 or $700, that should definitely raise red flags. I'm telling you this firsthand, guys, because I went through it. I booked this really inexpensive company. They showed up the morning that I was supposed to move and decided that they were gonna charge me like $500 more than I had a contract and everything that I agreed to, I signed off on. And I guess some of these companies, they scam you, they come in and they're like, oh, actually it's gonna be this amount, and that price is usually significantly higher, and they assume because you're in a bind and you're in a time crunch and you're stressed out that you'll just sign your life away. But they came in, they tried to take advantage of me. Luckily I had my mom there, and my mom was even gonna like give in. She's like, I'll give you the extra money, and I was like, no way. Like I signed a contract, fired them that morning, and I was freaking out because I really needed my stuff basically picked up and moved. And I called another company, and lo and behold, they said that they would do it for, around the same price that I was going to get originally. And yeah, I basically fired one company. If I can find the name of the company that tried to scam me, I will leave it in the description box below, so check there, because I definitely don't recommend them. And I will give you the name of the moving company that I actually wound up using. So that's tip number 9. And then tip number 10 is you've done all your homework, you're ready to move, you're good to go, you've planned properly. Basically, give yourself, for like I moved, like I said, from New York to LA, give yourself a considerable amount of like moving money. So I obviously planned for the moving truck and had to, have X amount saved. Give yourself money for tolls, give yourself money for gas. You're probably gonna need it to stay at a couple hotels, depending on how far you're driving. So make sure that like once you get over the craziness of just having everything in place, that you don't let some of the smaller details slip through the cracks. So I definitely recommend having an ample amount of money for the actual like travel process from location A to location B. And also another, not really side note, but it kind of goes with this, with the planning thing. I didn't move here with a job, you guys, and I don't recommend that. It's very hard to find a job prior to moving. They want you to be here in person and interview. Sometimes you're lucky enough to get a phone interview, which I had a couple of those. But definitely if you don't have a job locked up, have an ample amount of savings. I think I moved here with like $1,500 in my account, which I blew through in like the first month and a half, and that was me being stingy and not really going out and doing anything. So make sure that with everything that you're selling, that you're not like, woohoo, I got all this extra money from selling my furniture and stuff. Make sure you're putting that money away, put it towards your moving costs, put it into your savings. My whole point in number 10 is just to make sure that you have a nice little blanket that you're sitting on, and you're sitting pretty on, so that you don't leave yourself in an emergency situation. Plan ahead And I think that's everything. So if you guys have any specific questions, leave them in the comments below. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful. These are all my kind of tips and things that I learned in the whole moving process. Again, it's mainly about doing your homework and like really planning ahead, and it takes a lot of coordination. Give yourself time so you're not stressed out about it, but most of all, you're doing something for yourself that you love. Moving to LA, or actually moving far away to any place, was always a dream of mine, was just, you know, travel more. And I'm so happy I did it. I've never been happier, and I wish the same for you guys. So love you guys so much. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next